Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports Podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff, and we're talking Chiefs ahead of their opening game on Thursday night against the Baltimore Ravens with beat writer Jesse Newell and columnists Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian. Season number 65, game one, is a rematch of the AFC title game. Shortest offseason in Chiefs history and NFL history, I guess, right? Vahe, we were at the Chiefs facility earlier today, the practice facility, and we were trying to get Andy Reid and Travis Kelce to talk a little bit about, is the season's opener, is that a time to get any kind of clues about the team or shape a team's personality? Neither of them really bid on it, though, did they?
It didn't really bite. I felt like it was a major triumph that Andy just said he was curious. And then he suggested that perhaps the fans and media are also curious. And that was about how it goes on what they like to call Fast Friday, which in this week happens to be Tuesday, the last day before they get ready to play. And they're really kind of done with the media before that starts, not after.
All right, is this master of the obvious stuff? Last year in their opener, they lose to the Detroit Lions and score 20 points, and it's the second best defense in the NFL in terms of average yards and points allowed. And previous year, they score, was it 44, whatever it was, at Arizona, and they have the NFL's number one offense in scoring and points. Is it just a coincidence that they had, good defense in the opener, good offense in the opener previous year, and went on to be dominant in those sides of the ball in those years?
I'll just chime in real quick. I think that's a great point. It might just be coincidence, but it also ended up being kind of telling. And if we remember those 20 points last year, 7 of them came by way of the pick six. So you had a little feel for what the defense would be. I don't think we knew we had a feel for what the defense would be. Maybe you guys did, but I think we just wondered about everything at that point.
I mean, maybe the best thing that happened today for the Chiefs was that Travis Kelce came to the podium and he didn't injure himself at practice, because this was the same time last year when, there was that big scare with his knee. How long was he going to be out? And so maybe that's the biggest thing for the Chiefs heading into this one is, Andy Reid runs a tough training camp. And for a lot of training camp, all of us were there for it. The Chiefs had guys out. Chris Jones was out for a while, Nick Bolton, Justin Reed. But you look at this injury report for this week, and most of those guys are full go, are going to play. And so for the Chiefs to sort of escape, I use the word escape, but to make it through a tough Andy Reid training camp where there is the possibility, the likelihood that guys could get injured and basically are getting out of this mostly unscathed, that has to be a positive sign. And again, that even goes all the way up to game day, where last year Travis Kelce was out at the last minute, and it really put the rest of the offense in kind of a bind.
And not to mention Chris Jones, who didn't play in that opening game as well. Do we go into this season just assuming that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL? I mean, if we got to that point, Sam, where you just go into a year thinking they're the champions until somebody beats them, and it starts with the team that they beat in the AFC title game, and then the team that last knocked them out of the playoffs in week 2, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, I think best team and assumed champion are two different questions, just because of the nature of the NFL. Is this what the Chiefs have done over the last 5 years isn't supposed to happen. And look, I mean, anyone who thought the Chiefs were the best team in the NFL was proved wrong on opening night last year. And then throughout the course of the 17-game schedule, I mean, the Chiefs were not the best team in the league. They were the team that happened to win the Super Bowl and got hot at the right time. But this is, I think what's interesting about this game is the Chiefs kind of maybe proved to themselves that it didn't matter that much that they lost on opening night. And I think this game really matters for the Baltimore Ravens because they lost that AFC Championship game. I mean, the Ravens are absolutely a Super Bowl contender. They're a team that expects to be playing for championships, but it's what you just said, Blair, is definitely understood throughout the rest of the league that getting to a championship is going to require being able to beat this team. The Ravens were peak good last year. The Chiefs had an off year, and the Chiefs still beat them. And so I think this is a much bigger game for the Ravens, if nothing else than for their psyche to believe that they can beat the best team in the NFL, because whether or not they are the best team in the NFL or not, what you just said is accurate. The rest of the league goes into this game thinking that the Chiefs are the team to beat.
We were all at that game last year, guys, walking up with Baltimore. It felt like a coronation there. They hadn't had a championship game in their building, in their city for whatever it was, 50, 60 years. And it did feel like this was the moment. This was the team that was going to push across and get past Patrick Mahomes and make the Super Bowl and potentially go out there and win it. And so you're right, Sam. There is sort of this hex on the rest of the NFL. You can definitely throw the Bills in there. Maybe not the Bengals. Maybe that's the only team you can't throw in there. But right now, the rest of the NFL is sort of, it's on them to show that they can knock off the top team in the NFL and that they can beat the best quarterback in the NFL, which is Patrick Mahomes. And so that's up to Lamar, and that's up to Coach Harbaugh, and that's up to the Ravens. And they're going to have that opportunity, obviously, on Thursday night.
I think, Jesse, the odds favor the Chiefs, don't they? Not just in this game, but they're the Super Bowl favorite, are they not?
Yeah.
They are slightly over the 49ers. Sam can talk to this because I know he broke down sort of the AFC, NFC. I think it's tougher for the Chiefs just because it seems like the AFC has more good teams and more quarterbacks in that league compared to the other one. You'd rather be in the NFC. And so maybe the 49ers, they have obviously some of the offseason turmoil stuff. And when we're talking about a betting market, there could be just a little bit in there of the bettors saying, yeah, I'm going to bet the Chiefs instead of the 49ers because I've seen this story play out before. I'd rather bet the team that's won 2 straight Super Bowls. But yeah, to Sam's point, I mean, you can be the favorite to win the Super Bowl and still have what the odds would tell you about a 15 to 20% chance to do it if we're being realistic. So we'd still all take the field over the Chiefs. It's not like we're saying, oh my gosh, everybody who's coming into this season is way behind the Chiefs or that it's impossible for anything to happen. That's not the case at all. But if you're going to pick one team right now, I think you would want the Chiefs' chances. And that's been proven over time, not only because of Andy Reid and his ability to call really good games and really important moments, but Patrick Mahomes, as Sam mentioned last year, he talked to us in training camp. One of the quotes of training camp was when he first got there and mentioned that last season for a lot of the year was not fun for the offense. You know, they didn't have fun, but they still won a Super Bowl. A big reason for that is that Patrick Mahomes seems to perform his best at the most opportune of times, the most clutch of times. And until we don't see that, I mean, we didn't see it in the second half of the AFC Championship game a couple years ago against the Bengals, but until we don't see that in a recent game, then most people are going to be on the Chiefs bandwagon, and rightfully so.
I just throw this in too. It's a little funny, but I think you guys will agree with this. They won the Super Bowl. They're going for 3 in a row. And somehow, though, I do believe because of the way it went offensively, in particular, there's a little bit of a redemptive feeling inside of Patrick. Like, okay, we want to get back to what, made us who we were with the offense that can, take your soul at any time. And that's not really what they had last year. And I think that's a lot of why he said it wasn't fun last year. And, Sam, you really elaborated on that I think on your first column out of training camp, but I think we all know that there's something inside Patrick that's really, I guess it's consistent with the best of the best, but it's really different from what I've seen up close in person ever before.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick's trying to convince himself they lost this game last year, and we all know the result, but I think just because of the way it unfolded to get there, because of the frustrations they experienced, you're right, Vahe. I mean, he is using that as his motivation. I mean, the Chiefs, to their credit, don't just look at the final result and say, we're good. They look at it and say, what was wrong with the offense last year? And it's why so many times throughout training camp, we've talked about them trying to instill the deep passing game because it was completely absent. That's one of the most intriguing matchups of this opening on Thursday night is because the absolute best team at defending the deep ball last year was the Baltimore Ravens. So do the Chiefs on opening night attempt to say, we got to prove to ourselves we can do this against the top safety tandem in the league with Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams? Or do they say, we'll wait till week 2 against a Bengals team that we saw the Bengals up close in Arrowhead last year, very susceptible to the deep pass? Do the Chiefs wait until week 2? Or do we see the Chiefs' new offense on opening night? Because it's going to be hard as heck to implement that sort of thing against this Ravens team.
And I just mentioned how healthy the Chiefs were. The one exception to that is Hollywood Brown, who definitely could help with some of the downfield stuff that you're talking about, Sam. So will this be more of last year where the Chiefs sort of have to attack the intermediate and attack the other areas of the field? That is a really good question going into this one. And a little bit like last year, what the offense could change after week 1 based off of at least one guy that the Chiefs are going to get back.
Well, we're talking around one of the rookies who we think will make an impact for the Chiefs this season. That's wide receiver Xavier Worthy. along with Kingsley Suamataia and safety Jalen Hicks, I think are the three from the draft class that are going to play right away, make an immediate impact. Let's start with Worthy. No Hollywood Brown, but the Chiefs went out and signed Juju Smith-Schuster just last week. So kind of getting the 2022 band back together. I mentioned earlier that was a terrific offensive team. Patrick Mahomes was the MVP that year. He threw for his career best 5,200 yards. Amazing season for Mahomes the year he had Juju. Lesser role, I think, for Smith-Schuster this year, but he is back. I imagine they feel like he's going to be up to speed, and I imagine he'll have a couple of targets on Thursday night. But what about Xavier Worthy? What do we expect from him? Does he make an immediate impact? We didn't see that with Rashee Rice last year out of the gate, but there were different plans for wide receivers out of the gate last year. What are the initial preseason thoughts on Xavier Worthy?
Well, I'm really interested to see there's the wide receiver rotation in general. I mean, I think that the biggest thing they should learn from a year ago is that they shouldn't be playing all six guys on Thursday night. But I think Andy Reid probably can't help himself. When he's got a weapon, he tries to implement them to the best of their ability. With Xavier Worthy, that ability is stretching the defense. And if they take this similar approach to what you mentioned last year, Blair, with Rashee Rice, it's that you learn a piece of the playbook and then you layer it on. We were told in OTAs that was not going to be the route for Xavier Worthy, that there was going to be, the full playbook right away, but then he missed OTAs. And that is a crucial time. And so I do think we're going to see him gradually phased into the offense, but we know they're going to have something dialed up for Xavier Worthy on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, this is an intriguing one because this is exactly what you're talking about. A hamstring injury keeps you out of OTAs as a rookie. This is exactly what happened to Sky Moore his first year. And then we heard kind of whispers after the season about, hey, that time he really missed was valuable and maybe put him off to a slower start. Now, different players, and also, talking with Matt Nagy, Connor Embry, the receivers coach, and obviously Nagy, the offensive coordinator, they've been really impressed with Xavier Worthy from day one of meeting him at the NFL Combine and the way he could see offense, understand, have football IQ, understand the kind of the whole concept of a play, not just, oh, I run this route and then everything else happens around me. I don't really care. They were really impressed with his high level processing. I think that means more to the Chiefs offense than it does other ones. So I do think they're going to use him in different spots. I think they feel like he's accelerated when it comes to learning different positions. But at the same time, Sam, as you talked about, we've also heard Matt Nagy kind of put the okay, everybody take a deep breath on Xavier Worthy as well. Like, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to learn. It's going to take some time, those sorts of things. But as far as the comparison goes, I think it'll be further ahead, obviously, than what Rashee Rice was last year, who was battling some of those playbook issues, battling some of those learning different positions things. But as far as the deep ball, I mean, it only takes one or two balls for Xavier Worthy to make his impact in a particular game. Last year, they were having guys like MVS and McCole Hardman run those deep routes and never throwing it to him. If he can run those deep routes and they throw it to him one or two times, he can make a couple game-changing plays. So I think they're kind of trying to limit expectations on him, but yet knowing at any moment he can break out and make a play that could win a game for the Chiefs, and that's definitely an exciting weapon to have.
Yeah, one thing that strikes me as kind of interesting, we mentioned before, Travis Kelce didn't play in the opener last year because of his injury, and Rashee Rice just wasn't far enough along. So right away, that changes the dynamic of what they had last year. The three guys who started at receiver last year aren't even with the team anymore. So I guess I mentioned this just to bring up the point of they have a far more advanced Rice in this mix now than obviously they did last year. And it'll be interesting to see what that also allows them to do with trying to take the top off with Worthy and maybe with, the fast Ivy League wide receiver, Justin Watson.
I don't have the box score pulled up in front of me, but I believe that the Chiefs went into the opener a year ago with wide receiver number 1, Kadarius Toney.
Yes.
Am I right about that? Is that right?
Sky Moore is still on the team, though. He started that game a year ago, I think, too. It was Tony Marquez and Sky Moore.
Oh, it was Sky. Okay. I thought it was a third person who wasn't with the team anymore, but yeah. My bad.
But it was Noah Gray as well. I mean, those were the 4 wide receivers that Patrick Mahomes had on the first snap he took.
You know who's high on Sky Moore's potential this year?
Yes, I do.
Jesse,
Potential
please.
as in like Justin Watson potential. Well, let's not go overboard, but
You're
I
going
swig-
overboard.
I
You're going
swig on
overboard.
that
We're past
Kool-Aid.
overboard.
listen,
had
when
way
all
too
these
much of that
folks
Kool-Aid
see
Are we a
Sky
life
Moore-
preserver? Is that what you're saying?
when all these people, when all these fine folks watching this program or listening to this program see Sky Moore go for over 400 yards, which is not a crazy prediction, they will know the one person who told them it was going to happen before the 2024 season. Two thumbs, this guy right here.
Just to clarify, it is a crazy prediction. Sky Moore's got 490 yards in 2 years, and where's he going to be? 6th on the depth chart tomorrow?
What was Justin
Thursday?
Watson? What was Justin Watson on last year's depth chart? And he got 400 yards.
4th?
Was he? Okay. Sky Moore can be 4th with one injury.
Vahe, who has more yards, Sky Moore or Justin Watson?
Just the intellect in me says that it will be Justin Watson. Here's the thing, and you guys may well disagree, but I do think Andy really trusts Justin Watson in ways that he doesn't know he can yet with Sky Moore, and maybe that's a faint distinction in some ways, but I think that we'll see him pretty well in the mix, which it's going to give him a chance to do that.
I think they try to play up to every receiver's strengths, but the Chiefs were pretty honest about Justin Watson. They put him into Hollywood Brown's spot to have him run that role, and they did that about a week and a half, and they kind of said they had to pull the plug on that. He's not very good in the middle of the field, and that's why they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster. They felt more comfortable with him being able to kind of be that physical receiver and separate at that particular place. So I'm not disagreeing with you on Justin Watson. I think this is what the Chiefs coaches really hang their hat on here, is that whatever piece they have, they figure they can play to the strengths and try to, downplay the weaknesses. And with Justin Watson, we've seen him run so many sideline routes. He can take the top off with deep balls, those sorts of things, but he is very good toward the sideline. And I think they tried to move him inside and realized it wasn't working. And that's part of the reason that Juju Smith-Schuster is now back with the team. So as far as Sky Moore goes, I think he's kind of more Justin Watson what he was last year, which is like if a guy's shoelace goes out or he gets injured, then Sky Moore's stepping in and able to run that role and play that position, and obviously help on special teams as well, especially in the kickoff return game. So some things will have to happen for Sky Moore to have a bigger year, but I just wouldn't rule it out as much as some people are. Again, it's been a disappointment for him through 2 years, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. You can go from 250 yards to 400 yards with another year in the system.
Yes, we know. We know that's how you feel about it, Jesse.
I mean, people are going to be coming back September 3rd podcast. They're going to be seeing this. They'll remember who they heard it from first.
All right. Another intriguing rookie is Kingsley Suamataia. Jesse, you just wrote about him. Really good story about you talked to a strength coach at Brigham Young, and what's the value of having a good athlete at that position?
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often at tackle. Skylar Maine, who's the kind of head science guy at BYU that helps lead them in their strength training, was talking about like a lot of times they don't test guys in the 40-yard dash that are tackles because you just don't. Guys aren't running 40 yards downfield. You know what I mean? But if you can and you have the speed that Kingsley does, he said that they clocked him in a 4.8 40, somewhere in the 4.8s there at BYU, and then also he'd gotten up to 21 miles an hour, which is a crazy number for any sort of guy that's 300 plus pounds. You can see kind of what the Chiefs have done in the run game. They get him out to the perimeter. They had an end around. I think it was Xavier Worthy in the second preseason game where Kingsley got way out to the outside and blocked a guy. But Skylar was talking about just him being an athlete. He said, I don't see him as an O-lineman. I see him as an athlete who plays O-line. And he was saying if he changed his body type, he thought he could play linebacker. He thought he could play fullback. He thought if he played pickup games with NBA guys, he could slide his feet well enough to hang with them. And so it brings up some intriguing things with the Chiefs because Skylar said, hey, at BYU, they tried to throw the ball to him because he has good hands and good skills in that way. And so could it unlock some of Andy Reid's playbook, especially in the run game, getting him out on the edge, getting him out with screens? It potentially could, and then we'll see how creative the Chiefs get. We know that they run snow globes and corn dogs and shuttles and all these sorts of things to try to get the strengths out of the guys they have. To have an athlete like Kingsley on your offensive line, I'm sure the Chiefs are going to try to utilize and do some very creative things to get him involved.
Yeah, and we know they love the screen game as well, as you mentioned, and just not screens to running backs, to wide receivers, to tight ends, and I can just see him, Kingsley, that is, doing a lot of downfield blocking on those plays. So, all right, what about some concerns for this team? All of a sudden, running back is an interesting position for the Chiefs now that. Now that they're down one with Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the non-football illness list because of his PTSD, who is running back two for this team behind Isaiah Pacheco? And Sam or Jesse or Vahe, is the lack of a former starter, first-round draft pick, is this trouble early for the Chiefs?
Look, I would have thought so before they signed Samaje Perine. I mean, I was sort of, Dave Tobe, like pounding my fist on the table for Perine a week before they signed him, just because I think he's such a great fit for exactly what they need, which is not a running back two. It's a third down running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield, that's really good in pass pro. I mean, it's the Jerick McKinnon role that, McKinnon filled so well last year, and they missed Jerick McKinnon when he was gone. And so you get that, and then I think Carson Steele just slides into what Clyde Edwards-Helaire was doing a year ago. So this was like top three concern I had for the Chiefs going into training camp. I think they've addressed it as well as they could have addressed it. To me, the defensive depth is now the primary concern, and particularly up front. I mean, we saw the Chiefs offensive, defensive line backups and reserves get beat up in preseason and 3 games. And I don't think that's coincidental. I think they have worse depth than what they had at those spots a year ago. And the defense is, Jesse mentioned earlier that the defense is healthy going into this game. They better be, because I've got questions about who fills in if they've got certain players at any of the 3 levels of their defense go out.
I would just add in really quick, you touched on it, Sam, but I don't know what to make of the offensive line depth. Or maybe I should say I am skeptical about the offensive line depth, because it is just a lot untested, and I don't think really distinguished itself much in what we were able to see. So I think that's one of those, I think they know what they're doing, but I'd like to see how that plays out. And I guess Chiefs fans probably should feel like they don't want to see how that plays out, because if guys start going down early, that I think could be real trouble.
They made some interesting moves too, Sam, where I thought Matt Dickerson and Neil Farrell would both be on the practice squad, and they're not. We talk about guys coming back or sort of racing back to be a part of the Chiefs. Derek Notty's one of those who, you can kind of question his performance up till now with the Chiefs, but he's been out completely with that elbow injury and really hasn't done much. And they kept, Blair, you're the roster math guy here. They kept 4 defensive tackles, right? That's all they have on their roster right now, with Chris Jones, Treshaun Wharton, and then I'm missing one, but like
Naughty Mike Pinnell, and they actually just announced today that they signed, was it Tui Pelota? They signed him to the active roster. So but the point of that is they agree with us on this.
Yes, exactly.
They agree they do not have the depth at defensive tackle that they're accustomed to having.
Yeah, that was my question. It's just, those are big dudes. It takes some effort and energy to be in there, and you need rotation. And, Chris Jones can play a lot, but even playing 70% of the snaps is pretty ambitious for a defensive tackle. So, the defensive tackle depth, and then obviously the edge depth, they went out and got Cameron Thomas and traded for him from Arizona. There are questions up and down there, and I think depth overall is kind of the thing you circle with the Chiefs and you wonder about heading into this season.
I think about cornerback a little bit. The preseason hasn't produced cornerback 2 behind McDuffie, among Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, and Nas Johnson. Injuries played a big role in the, in that development in fall camp. So I assume Jalen Watson's going to start against the Ravens. And, the biggest loss, the single biggest loss for this team is L'Jarius Sneed. We remember the role that he played in the AFC title game last season. So I'm at a little bit of a concern about, cornerback 2. And it looks like Shamari Connor at this point is going to be your slot corner, basically borrowing him from safety, where I think safety's in good shape with Justin Reed and Brian Cook and Jalen Hicks, as we mentioned earlier. But I'm a little concerned about the cornerback.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think cornerback is their biggest question as far as their starters going into the opener. I mean, Jalen Watson is going to start on Thursday. I think all of us would be surprised if he's not the guy. He just hasn't played enough in the preseason, and he did not play well against Chicago. And so you think mentally, like, what's his confidence level going into this opener? But, a lot of people are talking about cornerback 2, but, Trent McDuffie's a new cornerback 1. He had the benefit of L'Jarius Sneed traveling with the very best receiver on the opposing team. He's going to be guarding a lot of those guys this year. He's got a new role. He's going to be playing strictly on the outside, we think, at least initially. And in the slot cornerback, when you talk about a matchup where the slot cornerback really matters, it's a team that runs the ball a lot, that runs the ball downhill a lot, that has a lot of play action, RPO stuff. Like Shamari Connor is going to be thrown into the wolves this game on Thursday when he lines up at slot cornerback. He hasn't done this really since high school. And there's a lot of assignments for that position because when you're facing Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, that guy's got to be involved in the running game too. He's got to tackle. And I always thought the most underrated aspects of the Chiefs cornerbacks the past couple of years is McDuffie can tackle. L'Jarius Sneed was a terrific tackler. And so Shamari Connor also has a big role to fill, even though he's not that cornerback 2, where 2 days ago, to your point, Blair, Steve Spagnuolo still said, I don't know exactly what we're going to do there.
I mean, Shamari, I'm less worried about his tackling than I am his coverage skills. And you've got Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman on the other side with Baltimore too, that potentially can wiggle around and get free there too. So I'm with you, Sam. Even the cornerback guys that seem settled aren't that settled. So the Chiefs have a lot to answer when it comes to the secondary.
Okay. Hey, Vahe, how about just the glamour matchup at quarterback? You've got Patrick Mahomes against Lamar Jackson. Let's see. Those two, I figured this out, those two and Aaron Rodgers are the only 3 players in the NFL that have won MVP awards that are still playing. And they've won 4 of the last 6, those 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You couldn't
2 apiece, yeah.
Yeah, 2 apiece. You couldn't come up with a better matchup on opening night.
Yeah, and what's extra fun about it, I think, is obviously the stakes of what this rivalry has come to mean and the contrast in styles. Remember was that a Christmas video when Patrick had a nice run and he was mic'd up and he joked about that he looked like Lamar out there. I think it's because he really doesn't look like Lamar out there. But we all know Patrick can be effective with the run, obviously. So I think that's exciting. It's part of what makes it a marquee game when you have guys that are, I think, as prominent as they are in the NFL at this stage. I think Patrick has separated himself, but that's part of what makes this enticing, that Lamar, one way or another, is, got ground to make up with Patrick. And it can only really happen in the postseason, but this is a nice place to make a statement too.
Yeah, Mahomes.
Isn't that incredible, Blair, that this guy's won 2 MVP awards, which is a rare thing in the NFL. And Vahe is exactly right that he's got a lot to prove.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's part of where the Ravens are as a team. Is remember when the Chiefs got up double digits against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game, it was the first time all year that Lamar had played behind by more than 1 possession. And they abandoned their game plan when it happened. This is a team that needs to play in front because that's the way they're accustomed to playing. That's the way they're built to play with Lamar Jackson. And so Vahe is exactly right. I mean, Lamar Jackson still has a lot to prove. And the main thing is, can you come back in the 4th quarter? Ball in your hands with 2 minutes left, like what's going to happen?
1-4 against Mahomes head to head, and 2-4 in the playoffs as a starter. Those numbers have to start turning around for Lamar Jackson to to what, right? We already acknowledge him as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but you just look at him differently than maybe Joe Burrow just because of those stats when it comes to postseason and head to head against the Chiefs. So. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this show. Thanks to Randy Mason for putting together the episode and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Jesse, Vahe, and Sam for sharing their insights on Jesse's birthday, no less. Thank you for listening. Let us know what you thought of the show with a rating and review, and we will be back soon on SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.